Most of the time we're not actually running from polar bears or lions. And so what has a humongous impact on on the emotions that we get into are our thoughts about the situation or our interpretations. You could write in interpretation as well. So a lot of times a trigger will be responded to by the thoughts that show up, and then that in turn triggers a particular emotion. So let me give you an example I use a lot with this. I want you to imagine that you end up missing your bus. And I want to try to imagine a situation under which you could actually be happy about that instead of being upset. So what I want you to imagine is that you are reading a book that you really like, or playing a video game. Let's imagine you're playing a video game and you're just about to beat the boss guy. And you know that it's going to, if you get on the bus, it's going to be jiggling around too much and you're not going to be able to play the game. So it could be that if you've got this video game, or you're in the last chapter where it's the most exciting part of the book, and if you're going to try to read that on the buses, you're going to get dizzy. You could be happy about seeing that bus pull out before you get there, as long as you weren't going to get in trouble for missing the bus. Somebody wasn't going to be mad at you or something like that. So you could actually be happy about missing your bus. So that's how thinking about it will affect that emotion. Now, most of the time, we're upset about missing the bus. We may be afraid that we're going to get yelled at, by our school teacher or our boss. And so the emotion that will come up would be fear. That will easily go into anger. We're going to talk in a minute how one emotion can turn into another emotion, and it's very routine that scared, trapped mammals go to anger. So completely routine that people get angry when they're initially scared. So in our bus example, you could be mad at somebody who you thought made you late. You could be mad at yourself if you've made yourself late. You could be mad at the bus driver if the bus driver came early, and so on. There could be different kinds of thoughts that would result in the emotion of anger. If your sweetheart was on the bus and you had really been looking forward to getting a chance to see them on the bus, you could be really sad because you lost that opportunity to be with your sweetheart. If she came along, or he or she came along a minute later, you could be overjoyed because it was great that you missed the bus, because she missed the bus too. So then there would be the experience of love and joy, also triggered by the same event of missing that bus, and so on. You kind of get the idea with that. Okay, so thoughts are very, very powerful in emotion going on, particularly because another really crucial feature of this diagram is that there's kind of a looping process that thoughts and what goes on in the body kind of go around and around in a circle. Now, in our diagrams, typically we have a couple of boxes on the way to that happening. There can be secondary emotions, wherein one emotion becomes another one, like fear turning into anger. This could really work like layers of an onion. I've seen people who would become scared after they got angry, because where they grew up, they could get into big trouble for getting angry, or people could feel guilty, or there'd be lots of different possible emotions that can be layered in different ways in the secondary emotion process. And then there's a certain process of after effects. These biological changes that are going on kind of linger in our body for a while, and so we'll continue to kind of maybe feel angry or scared for a while even after the trigger goes away. The lion heads the other way, but zebra's still kind of upset for a while. So this looping process, emotions will tend to build on themselves. Have you ever noticed that you kind of start to get mad, and then the more you think about it, the thoughts and the body, the thoughts will start to seem more and more true because your body's reacting to them by being upset, and we just kind of get more and more upset as we go along. This looping process is just a really just a humongous, well, I'm saying humongous a lot here, extremely important part of the emotional process. And when we get to the skills part of the intervening in that, you'll see that sometimes what we're really trying to do is just interrupt the looping process, or get it to go in another way. But before going to the skills, I want to just add in one other kind of important part to this, and that up in here is vulnerability factors. If we are tired, hungry, stressed out because a bunch of the lousy things have happened, if 8 bad things have happened during the day and then one more happens, we're going to react a lot more strongly. If our team just lost the Super Bowl, if we're guys, or if we're premenstrual for women, we are more likely to be emotional and more strongly emotional. So these vulnerability factors are an important thing to consider, and it's something that we try to address with the DBT skills as well. And then finally, on this end, there's a little box for emotion name. We give names to this whole process, partly just because it's very useful to do that, for reasons we'll talk about in a minute. All right, so this is the model of how emotions work. And now I want to talk about how DBT will plug interventions into this to get some of this to change. I already mentioned opposite action here. Acting opposite to the emotional urge. Just to say it perhaps too many times, opposite action is the quickest and dirtiest, most powerful tool that we can teach people to change the emotions that they are in. Now, we have talked about briefly before about the idea with DBT being called dialectical behavior therapy, that the dialectics has to do with the balancing of opposites and ultimately sort of the synthesis of opposing thoughts, emotions, or so on. But in DBT, whenever we have something that is kind of about changing things, we're also going to have another skill that balances that with paying attention to what's going on just right now. So opposite action is usually considered to be balanced by mindfulness of emotion. So when we're being mindful of emotion, we're paying attention primarily to these body changes and sensations that are going on. That's how we can tell what emotion we are in. It's really very useful to be able to know what emotion we're in for a variety of reasons. One of which is in order to be able to do opposite action, in order to be able to act opposite to the urge, we have to know which emotion we're in. So, for example, the behavior that we do when we're angry, sort of going towards what we're scared of, that's very much similar to the opposite action for fear. In fact, you can kind of see how anger is almost kind of an antidote to fear. Very, very useful in certain situations. But if anger is the problem, then we have to do the opposite for that. Although both fear and anger might be present, kind of in the mix of things, in order to actually deal with the anger, we have to kind of go away from the situation. Okay. Now, so that's one level of how mindfulness of emotion works. In addition to that, it turns out that simply noticing the sensations in the body itself can be a much better thing to do with your attention than continuing to believe the thoughts that you're having about the situation. Eventually, we're going to have to do something about these thoughts up here. And a lot of cognitive behavioral treatments really kind of spend a lot of time trying to talk people out of what they think. All right? So that can be called challenging interpretations, checking the facts. Various kinds of names are given to that. However, in DBT, we don't emphasize this nearly as much as some of the other treatments do, mainly because when people are really upset, this is really, really hard to do. If you're really mad at somebody, I'm going to have a much harder time talking you out of why you're so mad at them than if I can get you calmed down first, and then we can kind of see. So it tends to be the case that we will start with other things and start to work on the challenging interpretations kind of stuff much later in the game. We are probably more inclined to do other things that kind of change the channel of what we're paying attention to in our brain. So you can do that with paying attention to the physical sensations with mindfulness of emotion. Or there are a set of skills called distress tolerance skills, which involve paying attention to something else. So that could be almost anything, really. Anything that we can get ourselves to pay attention to besides why we're so mad at somebody will help us calm down. So we could play a video game. We could watch TV. We could go for a run. We could clean the house. I had a client who would vacuum whenever she was upset, and it just really worked for her because she would concentrate on the vacuuming, and plus she'd feel like she was doing something useful with all that energy. All right, so there are distress tolerance, sort of distraction skills that are part of that, and we teach. There's probably 300 of them. There's all kinds of different things that people could do to pay attention to something other than the thoughts which are getting them so upset. Also, as part of this, there are the what we call the reality acceptance skills, like radical acceptance, willingness and versus willfulness, and so on. Turning the mind towards acceptance. I'll be talking about that some more at another time. But these are, at the moment, I'm just sort of trying to plug in skills in lots of different places. Now, we have a lot of skills addressed at dealing with vulnerability factors. The acronym is, actually, I don't think I'm using that in this. Am I going to try to teach you that? Actually, not so much right now. So there's a bunch of things that we can do to try to address the vulnerability factors. If somebody's sick, we want to help them treat the physical illness. We want to check what it is that they're eating. Certain kinds of foods will make us more vulnerable. If we're kind of anxious, drinking coffee will get us more jittery. If we are kind of depressed, eating a bunch of sugar is likely to cause a spike and then a drop. So paying attention to what we're eating, avoiding alcohol and drugs that kind of give us a temporary respite from how we're feeling, but then make things worse over the long haul. Getting the right amount of sleep. If we're really tired, we clearly need to rest. Sometimes people spend so much time sleeping that they are doing very little in their life, and that contributes to their depression. So sometimes we're trying to find the right zone with that. And then lastly, getting physical exercise. Fabulous that you're doing a track, and I think that all of you are involved in some kind of physical exercise. getting physical exercise kind of burns up some of the chemicals that our brain has been sending out into our body. All the chemicals that are designed to get us to be able to run or fight. If we don't get exercise on a regular basis, those chemicals just are kind of remain around the system and gunk it up. We're going to be more and more edgy and more likely to get triggered into negative emotions. So exercise is very important. I actually was kind of running through in my mind, there's a DBT you'll see loves acronyms, and so I was actually running through an acronym, PLEASE, for physical illness, for the eating, avoiding alcohol and drugs, getting the right amount of sleep, and getting exercise. And we'll be looking at, you can find those skills on my website in more detail. So this is the working on that. Also related to vulnerability factors, we want to help people be kind of accomplishing some of the tasks in their lives that they can then feel good about. So there's some problem solving about getting our lives going, coping ahead with times that we can anticipate that we might be more emotional. Kind of planning for that will help us stay more balanced. So that's how we address the vulnerability factors. We can use our problem-solving skills to try to deal with things that trigger us on a regular basis. If we're triggered because we don't have enough money, we can try to be earning more money. We can get better housing. We can solve some of our problems with other people with some of the interpersonal skills in DBT that can help us have our relationships go better. So we're going to be kind of solving problems with to reduce triggers. We're going to be using communication skills as well. So let's see, what else have we left out here? What else do we try to kind of affect? People take psychiatric medication to try to deal directly with what's going on in the brain. And so there's an impact. Sometimes there simply are not enough serotonin levels or various kind of neurotransmitters present in the brain, and so people will be kind of sluggish and depressed. If there's too much of a certain kind of chemical stuff going on, people are more inclined to be anxious and so on. So you can address that directly. Opposite action ripples out into our facial and body postures. Sometimes we will actually have people change their body posture in order to be in a different emotional state. Very hard to be too scared if you kind of take a really confident sort of martial arts stance with your knees bent and just kind of ready to go. That's so much different from the kind of body posture of fear that it will actually have an effect on the body. And there's a bunch of stuff along that line. So I think that gives us an overview of how we think about emotions in the DBT, and then what it is that we try to plug in to make a change about it. Just lastly, the emotion name, I said I'd come back to this. Knowing which emotion that we're in supports mindfulness of it and of all the different parts of the thing, which again give us the places that we are going to try to create our interventions. So I think I'm going to leave that there.